Dr. Jackson had always been fascinated by the legends of ancient African tribes, so when a tip about a possible archaeological site deep in the jungle came his way, he couldn't pass it up. After days of trekking through the dense jungle foliage, his team came across a small clearing where they discovered a group of local villagers who had discovered something extraordinary. "Dr. Jackson, you have to come see what we found," one of the villagers beckoned. Dr. Jackson approached the group and noticed that they were huddled around a small, shiny black stone. "This looks like a diamond," he exclaimed, amazed by its smooth surface and unusual color. Dr. Jackson and his team carefully examined the stone over the next few hours, taking precise measurements and analyzing its composition. The villagers shared their own stories about the diamond as they worked, warning Dr. Jackson about the ancient curse that surrounded it. Despite their warnings, Dr. Jackson was ecstatic about the discovery. He was convinced that this diamond held the key to unlocking the mysteries of these ancient African tribes, and he was determined to find out more. Dr. Jackson and his team set up camp as the sun began to set over the jungle canopy, still in awe of the incredible discovery they had made. They talked late into the night about their future plans for exploration and shared stories from previous expeditions. Dr. Jackson couldn't wait to see what the future held for him and his team. Dr. Jackson and his team couldn't help but feel uneasy as they continued their exploration of the African jungle. Strange things had been happening since they discovered the black diamond. One of the team members, a young assistant named Sarah, failed to show up for breakfast one morning. The team initially assumed she had slept in, but as the hours passed with no sign of her, they became concerned. Dr. Jackson organized a search party, and they spread out into the jungle, calling her name and searching for any signs of her. However, the dense foliage made navigation difficult, and after hours of searching, they still hadn't found any leads. One of the team members noticed a small piece of fabric caught on a thorn bush just as they were about to call it a day. Sarah wore it as part of her shirt. The team's concern quickly turned to panic. They searched the surrounding area more thoroughly, but there was still no sign of her. As night fell, they were forced to postpone the search until the following day. Back at camp, the team sat around the fire, telling stories and trying to stay positive. Dr. Jackson tried his best to reassure them that Sarah was a capable and resourceful young woman. But even he couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was at work. Each member of the team wondered what had happened to Sarah and whether they would ever see her again as they retired for the night. The once exciting expedition had taken a dark turn, and they all knew that things would only get worse from here. Sarah's disappearance put the entire team on edge, and they couldn't help but wonder if the diamond was to blame. Dr. Jackson began to look into the diamond's history as they continued their exploration, hoping to find any clues that would help them understand what was going on. Dr. Jackson sat down with a group of local villagers one day and asked if they knew anything about the diamond's history. To his surprise, the villagers began to whisper and shift uneasily. Finally, an elderly man stepped forward. "I know the story," he said, his voice low and trembling. "However, it is not something to be taken lightly." Dr. Jackson encouraged the man to share what he knew, promising to treat the story with dignity. The man inhaled deeply and began to speak. He declared, "The diamond is cursed. It was once owned by a powerful African king who was said to be invincible while he possessed it. When the diamond was stolen, the king's power vanished, and he died soon after. The diamond has passed from owner to owner since then, leaving a trail of death and destruction in its wake." The team sat in stunned silence as the elderly man finished his story. It was difficult to believe in curses and legends, but the events of the previous few days had left them all in awe. Dr. Jackson expressed gratitude for the man's story and promised to treat it with the utmost respect. He couldn't get away from the feeling that they were all in grave danger. The team walked back to camp in silence, each lost in his or her own thoughts and fears. Despite their fears and doubts, the team knew they needed to keep going. They needed to find Sarah and solve the mystery of the diamond once and for all. As they continued their exploration, they discovered a series of clues that led them deeper into the jungle. Strange markings on trees, discarded objects, and even a piece of torn fabric similar to Sarah's shirt all pointed in the same direction. Dr. Jackson and his team pursued the clues with renewed zeal, hoping they would lead them to Sarah and, possibly, the answers they sought. The trail led them to a small clearing in the jungle, where they discovered a strange object that perplexed them all. It was a small, intricately carved wooden box covered in symbols and markings that none of them could identify. The box was securely locked and appeared to have been hidden there for years. Dr. Jackson realized they had discovered something significant. He carefully examined the box, hoping to find any hints that would help them solve the mystery. Finally, he discovered a small keyhole among the carvings. Dr. Jackson inserted the key into the lock and turned it with excitement and anticipation. As he lifted the lid, the lock clicked open, and the team held their breath. They discovered a small piece of paper inside the box with a single word written on it: beware. The team looked at each other, perplexed, unsure what to make of the foreboding warning. But one thing was certain: they were getting closer to the truth, and they wouldn't stop until they found Sarah and solved the mystery of the cursed black diamond. The team was adamant about continuing their search for Sarah, even as they encountered more and more roadblocks. But as they progressed deeper into the jungle, they couldn't help but feel as if they were entering the heart of darkness. With each step, the trees grew thicker and the air became heavier. Strange noises echoed through the forest, and they couldn't get away from the feeling that they were being watched. Despite their reservations, the team persisted. They knew they were getting closer to the truth, and they were not going to let anything stop them. When they got to the heart of the jungle, they found themselves on the edge of a massive ravine with a rushing river far below. There appeared to be no way across, but they knew they had to try. They discovered a rickety rope bridge spanning the chasm after some careful exploration. It appeared to be collapsing at any moment, but they had no choice but to cross. They stepped onto the bridge one by one, gripping the frayed ropes tightly as they crossed. The rushing water beneath them seemed to call to them, and the swaying bridge made their stomachs turn. They made it safely across, and as they approached the other side, they noticed a flicker of light in the distance. Is it a sign of civilization? They couldn't be certain, but they had to look into it. The team continued on, deeper into the heart of darkness, with renewed vigor. They knew they were getting closer to the answers they were looking for, and they refused to back down now. They were exhausted, hungry, and eager to find Sarah and learn the truth about the cursed black diamond. But one night, as they huddled around their campfire, they noticed something strange. Tom, one of their team members, was behaving suspiciously. He was huddled over his phone, furiously typing away, and appeared to be hiding something. When they asked what he was up to, Tom paused before finally admitting that he had been in contact with someone who claimed to know something about the diamond. They'd promised him a large sum of money in exchange for the diamond's location. The team was stunned and distressed. They had put their trust in Tom, and he had now betrayed them in their mission. They knew, however, that they couldn't let his actions derail their search for Sarah. They confronted Tom, and he finally admitted that he had been dealing with debt and financial difficulties. He believed that selling the diamond information would solve all of his problems. However, as the team spoke to him and reminded him of the importance of their mission, Tom realized the gravity of his error. He apologized profusely and promised to do everything in his power to make things right. The team forgave Tom, but they couldn't shake the weight of his treachery. It was a stark reminder that they were not alone in their quest for the truth. They knew the road ahead would be long and difficult as they settled in for the night, but they were determined to keep going, no matter what obstacles arose. The team was getting closer to discovering the truth, but they were aware that danger lurked around every corner. They had already overcome numerous challenges, but they were unprepared for what came next. They were walking through the jungle when they heard the sound of approaching footsteps. When they turned around, they saw a group of armed men approaching them, led by none other than Raphael, the notorious diamond smuggler. Raphael and his men were irritated to see the team poking around in their business, and they stated unequivocally that they would go to any length to protect their operations. The team was outgunned and outnumbered, but they refused to give up. They attempted to persuade Raphael that they were only looking for their missing friend, Sarah, and had no interest in his illegal activities. Raphael, on the other hand, refused to listen and ordered his men to kidnap the team and hold them hostage. The team realized they needed to act quickly if they were to escape. They devised a strategy quickly, and as soon as Raphael and his men were distracted, they fled. They darted through the trees, trying to put as much distance between themselves and their pursuers as possible. Raphael and his men, on the other hand, were hot on their tails, firing shots in their direction. They were about to give up when they noticed a small cave ahead of them. It was their only means of escape. They dashed into the cave in the hopes of finding a way out the other side. But as they descended into the cave, they realized they were in even greater danger than they had anticipated. The air became thick and damp, and they could hear rushing water in the distance. They were aware that they had discovered an underground river, and that they were running out of time. They swam through the murky water, feeling their way along the cave's rocky walls. They were about to give up when they noticed a glimmer of light ahead of them. It was the only way out. They swam towards the light and burst out of the cave, gasping for air with renewed vigor. They'd gotten away, but they knew they weren't safe. The perils of the jungle and the curse of the black diamond remained. The team couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched as they continued on their journey. They'd heard stories about the cursed black diamond, and they knew its dark powers weren't to be taken lightly. As they settled in for the night, they heard strange noises coming from the jungle. They sounded like murmurs and whispers, and they seemed to get closer and closer. The team tried to dismiss it as their imagination, but they couldn't shake the creepy feeling that washed over them. They were surprised to hear footsteps outside their tent. They tensed, bracing themselves for anything. When they lifted the tent flap, they were surprised to see Sarah standing there, tired but unharmed. She explained that she had been kidnapped by Raphael and his men but had escaped and had been wandering through the jungle ever since. They couldn't help but wonder how she had found them in the middle of the dense jungle as they hugged her in relief. That's when they noticed something out of the ordinary. Sarah was wearing a necklace with a black diamond in the center. The team exclaimed as they realized the cursed diamond had found its way back into their possession. They knew they had to be cautious lest they succumb to its dark spell. They couldn't help but feel foreboding as they settled in for the night. The curse of the black diamond had followed them every step of the way, and they were well aware that they were not yet safe. But they were determined to keep going, no matter what dangers awaited them. The team had finally made it to the heart of the jungle, where they hoped to discover the source of the black diamond's curse. However, as they approached the ancient temple where it was said to be housed, they were met by none other than Raphael. Raphael made a deal with them. He would give them the diamond in exchange for their silence. He was well aware that the team had the ability to derail his illegal operations, and he was willing to go to any length to protect his interests. The team was divided. They knew the black diamond was dangerous and needed to be destroyed, but they also knew Raphael was a powerful man who could ruin their lives. But just as they were debating Raphael's offer, they heard drums in the distance. The local tribe had also been looking for the cursed diamond. The team recognized an opportunity. They explained the situation to the tribe, and together they devised a plan to retrieve and destroy the diamond once and for all. They approached Raphael with a counter-offer. They would assist him in smuggling the diamond out of the country in exchange for his assistance in destroying it. Raphael agreed because he knew it was his only chance to protect himself. But just as they were debating Raphael's offer, they heard drums in the distance. The local tribe had also been looking for the cursed diamond. The team recognized an opportunity. They explained the situation to the tribe, and together they devised a plan to retrieve and destroy the diamond once and for all. They approached Raphael with a counter-offer. They would assist him in smuggling the diamond out of the country in exchange for his assistance in destroying it. Raphael agreed because he knew it was his only chance to protect himself. The team thought their problems were over after destroying the cursed black diamond. They quickly realized, however, that one final confrontation was required. They had received a message from a mysterious figure who claimed to be the original cursor of the diamond. The team knew they had to confront this person if they were to finally put an end to the curse. They couldn't help but feel nervous as they made their way to the meeting point. They'd been through so much already, and they had no idea what to expect next. They were surprised to find a frail old man waiting for them when they arrived at the designated location. He introduced himself as the diamond's guardian and explained that the curse was placed on the diamond to protect it from those who would abuse its power. The team listened intently as the old man told them about the cursed diamond's history, and they realized they had been on a journey of discovery and redemption the entire time. They couldn't help but feel grateful as they thanked the old man for his wisdom and guidance. They had been given a second chance to make things right, and they had completed their mission successfully. The team left the old man happy, knowing they had fulfilled their destiny. They had overcome great adversity and learned the true meaning of friendship, trust, and perseverance in the process. They couldn't help but smile as they made their way back home. They knew they would never forget their journey, and they would treasure their memories of the curse of the black diamond.